Please, don't sign this.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. If you clicked on this video, you have an idea of what's going on between Steven Crowder and the Daily Wire. I've been keeping up with the back and forth between them for the last couple days. So I wanted to put this video out there and kind of go over who's in the right and who's in the wrong. So let's get right into it.
This is a conversation that I've actively avoided, sidestepped, and I've hoped and prayed that it not be necessary behind the scenes for a long while, but that's no longer possible. I've also made it clear that I wouldn't be in the business of attacking other conservatives, regardless of disagreements or personal issues. And I've always explained my logic was relatively simple. I believe that the world was better with more voices out there rather than less. We here at Mug Club, we thought that we were all in this together, that we were fighting the media, entertainment, industrial complex. We thought that we were all genuinely taking it to big tech. But too many of those in charge of the big conservative platforms are verifiably in bed with them. I now know what you are signing out there. I have the luxury of not having to. I don't have to be here. I don't have to say this. Please, don't sign this.
He doesn't name who sent him this contract in the video, but a lot of people speculated that it was the Daily Wire. So he goes through this whole contract, and he basically comes up with the idea that this company that sent him the contract is abiding by the big tech companies and their censoring. And then the next day, the Daily Wire came out with their hour-long video going through the entire contract in response to Steven Crowder. So let's see what Steven Crowder has to say about his contract, and let's compare it to how Jeremy Boring responds. Let's get into it.
Do not sign something that includes, let me go through this. Effectively, full ownership of all your social media platforms, channels, in perpetuity, the rights to your content, name, image, likeness, even the ones that you've built.
Okay, so the first thing that he looks at here is the ownership of his social medias. So the contract that was offered to Crowder is technically not a contract, but basically it's an open to negotiation piece of paper. Basically just saying that, hey, Daily Wire is interested in making a negotiation with you. If you would like to negotiate back, here's what we initially came up with. Initially, he was offered $50 million for a 4-year contract, $12.5 million a year for Crowder to work under Daily Wire. Let's hear what he has to say.
It says DW will have the exclusive right to manage, curate, and monetize his official Facebook, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Snapchat, Rumble, and other social media accounts, excluding his existing personal Twitter and Instagram accounts. So why would we exclude some but not exclude others? Well, we're saying that during the term we have, of course, he puts his podcast on Apple Podcast. We're the ones monetizing the Apple Podcast. So this is just making clear that yes, we're selling ads in his podcast. The podcast goes out on Apple Podcast. That revenue comes back to us. We put something up on Facebook. Same thing. We bring in ad revenue off of that Facebook piece of content. But we're going to own that during the term. Obviously, at the end of the term, he's going to get his official Facebook account back. He's going to get his official YouTube account back. He's going to get his official Apple Podcast channel back. But during the term, again, all those people behind us, we've got experts in every one of these platforms, how to optimize it, how to make sure that you're getting the most out of it, and we'll manage that and we'll collect the revenue. But not as Twitter and Instagram, because those are very personal channels. You can't manage someone's Twitter. I can't speak for Candace Owens. I can't speak for Ben Shapiro. This one was something that Steven seemed particularly aggravated by in his video, although I don't understand why.
For someone like Steven Crowder, who has spent a majority of their life building up social medias like YouTube, Instagram, the idea of giving that over to somebody else can be quite a hard idea to grasp. So I kind of understand where he's coming from. For them to manage and curate a channel like YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Snapchat, Rumble, that makes sense. And monetizing on these accounts makes perfect sense. Like I said, that's why they gave him $50 million for 4 years, because they want to make that money back. This is an investment from the Daily Wire into Steven Crowder. And again, this isn't a contract. This is a open to negotiation piece of paper. It's a fancy way of saying, hey, these are our terms as of right now. We're open to negotiate. I'm on the Daily Wire side with this one. I think they had the right to ask for this, and I think Crowder may have made this sound a little worse than it is. So let's go back and let's listen to Crowder's next issue with the contract or the piece of paper that they sent to him.
If Crowder fails to deliver a monthly content in any month or any of the quarterly content in the corner, including any and all ad reads, and by the way, all these contracts came with 3, 4, 5 ad reads per show, which would fundamentally change what this show is. Got to get those dollar bills. So if I failed to do that, it would be a $250,000 reduction in fee per quarter. If, let's say, we did do everything per quarter, but annually maybe missed something, like let's say we went and did a Change My Mind instead of a daily show, which of course requires a lot more work, there'd be a separate $1 million penalty for that if you miss a single piece of content. And the amount of content required is not in line with, frankly, it's worse than Disney, it's worse than ABC, it's worse than NBC, it's worse than CBS. This is ownership of you and everything that you do. But here's, just to drive it home, don't sign something that has another $100,000 daily penalty if it's not signed off on beforehand. You get hit by a car, you have a sick day, you could lose $100,000 a day.
And let's see what Jeremy Boring has to say in response to Crowder.
Daily content. If he fails for any reason to deliver 192 episodes of The Daily Show, or if he fails to include the ads that we agreed to or the promotions that we agreed to in those episodes, then we'll give a $100,000 reduction every time. What's that about? Well, again, you can't pay someone any amount of money, but you certainly can't pay them an unimaginably huge amount of money for their show and then not get the show. So what this is saying is you don't have to produce a show every day. You don't have to produce 260 or 250 or 240 or 230 or 220 or 210 episodes a year. You got to produce 192 episodes a year. You can film some of them in advance. You can stack them up. All of that's contemplated in there. You could shoot on a Friday so that you can take 2 days off next week. But if you don't give us 192 episodes, we can't pay you the same amount of money as if you did give us 192 episodes. Steven said that this was unfair, that if he had a sick day or got in a car wreck, we'd dock him $100,000. But I think that's just totally inaccurate for two reasons. One, presumably if he was sick this Tuesday, he could just shoot an episode next Friday and you'd be completely even. He's got an awful lot of extra time in the year. And second of all, it's actually contemplated a little bit later what happens if there's a disability. In fact, we'll just skip right to it. It's item E. In the event of temporary disability or serious illness that prevents Crowder from performing, the fee will be reduced on a pro rata basis, not subject to the fee reduction mentioned above. What does that mean? Well, instead of a sort of punitive fee because he's choosing not to do the right thing, in that situation, you'll just reduce it by dividing the total amount of money contemplated, by the number of episodes, just subtract that, which I think is, again, incredibly fair. If you're being paid $1 for every box you deliver 10 boxes, you get $10. If you deliver 9 boxes, you get $9. Monthly and quarterly content, well, this is more valuable content and there's less of it, so the fee is higher, $250,000 if he misses that kind of content. Annual content, well, this is the most important, most expensive content. If you were supposed to have done a complete documentary this year and you didn't deliver it, well, we're going to subtract $1 million because that's one of the most important high-value pieces of content that we asked you to make that year. And then D just says reset, the fee reduces each calendar year.
Crowder earlier, he talks about how they're asking for a lot. In reality, I don't think it's that much. So if you really do the math, you're looking at 15 to 20 hours a week. Again, I think Daily Wire is in the right. I don't think they're asking too much of Mr. Crowder. Crowder's full-time job is to be a YouTuber, so you have to assume that he has at least 40 hours a week to dedicate to his job. So to ask to perform the content that he loves to do doesn't really sound like a lot. And on top of that, $12.5 million a year to work 25 hours at the most a week. On top of that, the Daily Wire would be the one manufacturing, editing, and producing the content at this point. It sounds like Daily Wire's in their right mind. And then he goes on to talk about the fee reductions, about how, they take $100,000 away. If I'm going to give you $50 million for 4 years to make this many episodes and you don't make an episode because of a personal choice, you don't deserve the full $50 million. And of course, the fee reductions in his $50 million goes down more for each production. So for the stand-up productions, It's 250,000, I think, because those are more important. It would bring more revenue back to Daily Wire. Just like the movie What is a Woman brought a huge amount of profit and revenue to the Daily Wire. So if Steven Crowder decides just to not do that, well, then they're going to withhold $1 million because that's a huge production that would bring a lot of revenue back to the Daily Wire. So again, I'm going to go on Daily Wire's side here. They're just asking for Steven Crowder to make what they are paying him. They're not going to pay him for what he doesn't make, and that makes perfect sense. So let's dive into the next point that Crowder makes.
So here's the worst part. Do not, kids, under any circumstances, sign a contract with people who claim to be conservative, but will penalize you 25% for any demonetization or sponsor boycott. Look, let me read this to you. If any of the major platforms, oh no, sorry, that's the second one. Let me go back to the first one. There's another 20%. It's 45% if you get a content strike. Let's start with the demonetization. If blank is boycotted or dropped by more than 50% of the advertising partners, the company is not able to replace them within 90 days, the fee will be reduced by 25%. That's a sponsorship boycott. So that's saying, hey, liberals, boycotts work. They work on our guys. We'll punish them for you. Let me go on. Specifically, YouTube demonetization. If any of the major platforms issues a content strike such that Crowder cannot be monetized on such a platform, and the company is not able to resolve the issue within 90 days, the fee will be reduced by 25% moving forward. Now, I thought this was a mistake because, these people maybe didn't know who I am, that we've been demonetized for 3 years. No, it was made very clear to me in no uncertain terms. This is what's sent out to everybody. And then if you get a strike, meaning a suspension, another 20% reduction. And then another 20% of it happens on Apple. And then another 10% of it happens on Facebook. And then another 10% of it happens on Spotify. Imagine you're deplatformed, as we've seen in the past, where all the major entities decide to remove you in one day. Rather than having a conservative alternative, you would now be down to 5 to 15% of the revenue of your contract.
Let's see what Jeremy's response is to this.
So what were we trying to accomplish with this section? But let's go through it. The reduction of fee from lost revenue from boycotts, content strikes, or bans from major social media platforms. A, ad drop. If Crowder is boycotted or dropped by more than 50% of his then extant advertising partners, that is, if 50% of the money that he's making from advertisers is suddenly gone, and we're not able to replace that revenue within 90 days, then his fee will be reduced by 25% until such time as the ad revenue has been restored for a period of 90 days, and then it would all reset. Stephen says, all the left does is boycott our advertisers, so this just says to the left, your boycotts work and we'll enforce it for you.
So Crowder has a point here. So as of right now, if Crowder gets demonetized, he goes over to his mug club, and that's where he makes his money. So he can say whatever he wants on YouTube, and that's how Crowder has made his influence and following on YouTube, because he can say whatever he wants. He doesn't care if YouTube demonetizes him, because he and his influence and his followers would just go over to Mug Club, where he has his own paywall and he makes his own money. But now what's going to happen, in the back of Steven Crowder's mind, he knows that he's demonetized on YouTube, that his fee, his $12.5 million, will be cut by 25%. Then of course he's not going to say whatever he wants on YouTube, because he doesn't have Mug Club to fall back onto, because all the profits are going to Daily Wire. He's going to create his own filter subconsciously, because now it affects his living. So let's listen to what Boring has to say more. But this is where it gets absolutely insane, because this is not how contracts work. Salary is a salary. If I give you my work, you give me my money. If he gives you 192 episodes, you give him $12.5 million a year.
We will punish the content creator for you. But this isn't about punishing the content creator.
It might not be about punishing, but you are. You are punishing. By writing this in the contract, you are punishing. Whether it's a punishment or not, he's losing 25% because of something that he can't control.
This is about if the Daily Wire is going to leverage, I can't stress it, probably $100 million by the time you have marketing and infrastructure costs, by the time you pay for all the legal compliance, all the technology that it takes to support Stephen's show and Stephen's show, even at the price that we offered for it, which he would have wanted much more, at least $100 million. Obviously, if the show makes dramatically less money, well, then Stephen has to make less money because we're making less money. And I brought this up to Stephen on the phone, and I said, Stephen, if
This is ridiculous to me.
if we guarantee you $1 for your show, and the show makes $1 in ad revenue and $1 in subscription revenue, then how does the money work? Well, it works that $2 come in, you get your guaranteed $1, we get $1. What do we do? What do you do with your $1? Well, you produce your show and you pay yourself. What do we do with our $1? Well, we market your show, provide all the back-end infrastructure, pay for the 250 plus humans who work to make all of this continue to grow. So we pay for that out of our $1, and then we pay ourselves. But that's how it works. I said, if the next day one of the dollars, the ad $1, goes away, now what happens? Should it be that you said something on your show that caused that $1 to go away? Now, you keep your $1 and we make $0? I said, that wouldn't make any sense. Obviously, you would have to lose a little and we would have to lose a little.
Because that is not how it works. The Daily Wire is taking a risk, an investment, in the hopes that Steven Crowder will make more than $50 million in 4 years for the Daily Wire. So if they are taking the risk, then they potentially will lose that $50 million. The risk should not be on Steven Crowder. If Steven Crowder makes 192 episodes, he will get all of that $50 million. What they are doing here is they're putting their risk onto Steven Crowder. So let's use him for example, right? Steven Crowder doesn't bring in as much as Daily Wire thought he was going to, right? So they cut his salary, his money by 25%. Right? If he was to bring in 10 times as much as the Daily Wire thought he was going to bring in, then his salary should be 10x. So let's put this in a more understandable way. Let's say I'm a real estate owner, right? And I go out and I find a house and it's $100,000. And I buy this house for $100,000. And my intention is to flip the house and make profit on it. And I give you $50,000 to fix my house, right? So now I'm $150,000 in the hole. That's the risk that I have taken, right? You fix the house, boom, beautiful, perfect. I sell it for $200,000 and I make $50,000. So I put $150,000 in and I made $200,000. So I profited $50,000, right? I took the risk. I got a big reward. Let's say I hire you $50,000 to make the house, right? You do everything perfect. You marble countertops, beautiful carpeted flooring, right? And I go to sell the house and it sells for $100,000. So now I'm like, well, I didn't make my money back, but I need $25,000 back from you because I didn't make my money back. What sense does that make? You still did the work. That was my risk and I'd lost on my risk because the company owner takes on the risk, not the employee or the contractor. By me paying you $50,000 or Daily Wire paying Steven Crowder $50 million, you are an employee or a contractor. We're not business partners. If I were to say, hey, let's be business partners, and we both put in $50,000 for the house, then we would both get 50% of the profit. If we both put in $50,000 and we sold the house for $200,000, there's $100,000 in profit, which we would split because we are business partners. To be an employee or a contractor to fix the house, you have no risk. You do the work, you get the money. I can't come back and say, oh, I didn't make my profit, so I need $25,000 back. And I will say, Jeremy Boring is a very great speaker. So the way he makes the sound is like it's on Steven Crowder. He's like, it's so simple to understand. If we don't make money, we can't pay you. If Amazon doesn't make money, they still have to pay their employees or they lay people off. It's up to the company to make sure we make a profit. When you take a risk or an investment into a real estate, into a car, into a person like Steven Crowder, you need to be willing to lose that $50 million. If you can't lose the $50 million, you shouldn't have made the investment. That is poor risk management is what that is. Crowder is an employee or a contractor, and therefore if he does A, he gets B. If he doesn't do A, he does not get B. If he doesn't make 192 episodes, he doesn't get $12.5 million a year.
Well, I said, we're trying to sort of emulate the idea of a joint venture. And Stephen said, no, you should lose all the money. It's your business.
That's exactly how it should work. It isn't a joint venture. If it was a joint venture, they would both be investing money. Steven Crowder is 100% right. This isn't venture capitalist. This is, here's money to do this. Steven Crowder is correct when he says you should lose the money, because he should. He took the risk in Steven Crowder.
And I said, well, Stephen, how would we have a business? Why would we be in business? And how would we stay in business? And Stephen, this is a very important point. Stephen, again, I think the most entertaining, talented person in the...
He's a very good public speaker, because the person he's arguing with or debating, he compliments that person. Like, he understands how Steven Crowder could misinterpret this, or I understand how you could not get this. But in reality, he is wrong. The Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring, is wrong. This is not venture capitalist. This is a company hiring an employee.
Movement. I think one of the most entertaining and talented people in entertainment.
He's complimenting him.
Generally in the country today.
It gives the premise that he's right.
Has created a very successful content generation company, a very successful production company. But Stephen's never had to create the company that actually distributes, markets, and monetizes.
I don't think Daily Wire is in cahoots with big tech. I just think they simply don't understand the difference between an employee and a contractor and a partner and a business venture. Crowder's right. I mean, they shouldn't be taking a percentage off because it's their risk, but it's sad. I mean, this is sad because Jeremy and Steven used to be friends, and not only is that sad that they were friends, but the fact that two groups of people have the same beliefs, but because there was a few misunderstandings and no negotiating, that now these two groups of people are against each other. It's sad to see that.
I'm having a public dispute with my friend of the last decade, which is one of the saddest things I've ever faced in public and professional life. It's just a horrible thing.
Again, I think it was just a misunderstanding. They both have the same beliefs, and it's sad to see two groups of people with the same beliefs become apart because of what I think is a miscommunication. Let me know what you think, and what would you have liked to seen come out of this? I would have loved to see Crowder at the Daily Wire, and that would have been really cool to see. So maybe sometime in the future. You never know. Never say no. I'm going to go back to publishing my normal content. So thanks for listening, and
sometimes I like to hike up mountains just to see how crazy small we are in this world. So how the fuck are you still bitching about your problems? Can you fall apart?